Steve Harvey has one of the most expressive faces on television. Over 15 years of hosting Family Feud, his reactions have become legendary. The raised eyebrows, the shocked stares, the slow walk away from the podium when someone gives an unbelievable answer. But on one particular episode in November 2024, Steve's face told a story that words never could. When a 72-year-old grandmother named Dorothy Miller stepped up to the microphone and revealed a secret she had kept for 50 years, Steve's expression went from curiosity to shock to tears in less than 30 seconds. This wasn't just another funny game show moment. This was a story about courage, sacrifice, and the power of finally speaking your truth. What Dorothy said that day would not only shock Steve Harvey, but it would inspire millions of people around the world to face their own hidden truths. If you love real moments like this, where families share their incredible stories on Family Feud, please take a second to hit that like button and subscribe to our channel. We share the most powerful, heartwarming, and unforgettable moments from the show. Trust me, you won't want to miss what happens next in Dorothy's story. Dorothy Miller was 72 years old, but you would never know it by looking at her. She stood tall and proud, with silver hair styled beautifully and eyes that sparkled with life and wisdom. She was a retired elementary school teacher from Birmingham, Alabama, who had spent 43 years shaping young minds and inspiring children to believe in themselves. Her former students, now adults with children of their own, still remembered her as the teacher who made learning fun, who stayed after school to help struggling readers, who brought cookies on Fridays and told the best stories. Dorothy had 3 children, 8 grandchildren, and 2 great-grandchildren. Her family described her as the glue that held everyone together. She organized all the holiday gatherings, remembered every birthday, and always knew exactly what to say when someone was going through a hard time. She was known in her community as someone who gave generously to others, who volunteered at the local food bank, and who never had a bad word to say about anyone. But Dorothy carried a secret so heavy that it had shaped the entire course of her life. A secret that had influenced every major decision she had made for the past 50 years. And on this day, standing on the Family Feud stage with her family around her, Dorothy had decided it was finally time to let that secret go. The Miller family had come on the show as part of a celebration. Dorothy's youngest daughter, Rebecca, had organized the whole thing as a surprise for her mother's birthday. The family consisted of Dorothy, her 3 adult children, and one of her granddaughters. They were competing against the Henderson family from Georgia, and the atmosphere was light and fun. Everyone was laughing, enjoying the experience, celebrating being together. Dorothy had been quiet during most of the game, letting her children and granddaughter take the lead. She smiled and clapped and cheered them on, but something seemed to be weighing on her mind. Her daughter Rebecca noticed it first. She had seen that look on her mother's face before. It was the look Dorothy got when she was wrestling with something important, when she was trying to decide whether to speak up or stay silent. The Miller family won the main game by a comfortable margin. When it came time for fast money, Dorothy's son James went first and scored 184 points. That meant Dorothy only needed 16 points to win the $20,000. It should have been easy, almost impossible to lose. But when Dorothy stepped up to the podium, it became clear that winning the money was not what was on her mind. Steve Harvey walked over to Dorothy with his usual charm and energy. He was ready to ask the 5 fast money questions, confident that this sweet grandmother would easily pick up the few points needed to win. But as he looked at Dorothy's face, something made him pause. "Miss Dorothy," Steve said gently, "are you okay? You look like you've got something on your mind." Dorothy took a deep breath. Her hands were trembling slightly as she gripped the edges of the podium. The studio audience, which had been buzzing with excitement, began to quiet down, sensing that something unusual was happening. "Mr. Harvey," Dorothy said, her voice soft but steady, "I do have something on my mind, something I've needed to say for a very long time. And if you don't mind, I'd like to say it right now before we play this round." Steve's eyebrows raised. This was not how fast money typically went, but he could see in Dorothy's eyes that whatever she needed to say was important. He nodded slowly. "Of course, Miss Dorothy, take your time, say whatever you need to say." Dorothy turned slightly so she could see her children standing off to the side of the stage. All 3 of them looked confused and concerned. Her granddaughter had her hand over her mouth, wondering what was happening. Dorothy's eyes filled with tears, but she blinked them back. She had made up her mind, and she wasn't going to back down now. "My children know that I was married to their father for 35 years before he passed away," Dorothy began. They know that I loved him, that we built a good life together, that we raised them with love and care. All of that is true, but there's something they don't know. Something nobody knows except me. The silence in the studio was complete. Steve Harvey's face showed his growing realization that this was going to be something significant. The cameras stayed on Dorothy as she gathered her courage to continue. Before I married their father, Dorothy said, her voice beginning to shake, I was in love with someone else. Her name was Margaret. We met in college in 1970. We were roommates and we fell in love. Back then, that kind of love wasn't accepted. It wasn't safe to be who we really were. We could have lost everything. Our families, our futures, our freedom. So we kept it secret. We loved each other in the shadows, always afraid of being discovered. Steve's expression had shifted from curiosity to deep attention. His eyes never left Dorothy's face as she spoke. In the audience, people were frozen, hanging on every word. When we graduated from college, Dorothy continued, Margaret got a job offer in California. She asked me to come with her. She wanted us to build a life together, to be brave and face the world together. But I was terrified. I was scared of what people would say, what my family would do, how society would treat us. So I said no. I broke both our hearts because I was too afraid to be myself. Dorothy paused to wipe tears from her eyes. Her children were crying now too, not from judgment but from seeing their mother's pain, from understanding for the first time what she had carried all these years. I married a good man, Dorothy said. I want to be clear about that. My husband was kind and decent, and I cared for him deeply. We built a good life together. We raised beautiful children. I have no regrets about the family we created, but I've always known that I wasn't being completely honest about who I was. I've lived my whole life as half of myself, hiding a part of my identity that I was too afraid to acknowledge. Steve Harvey's eyes were glistening with tears now. His hand was pressed against his chest as he listened to Dorothy's story. This was clearly affecting him deeply. I'm 72 years old, Dorothy said, her voice growing stronger. And I'm tired of hiding. I'm tired of carrying the secret. I'm tired of wondering what my life might have been if I had been brave enough to be myself. So I'm saying it now, here in front of all of you. I'm saying it to my children, to the world, to myself. I'm a gay woman. I have always been a gay woman, and I spent 50 years hiding that truth because I was afraid. The moment Dorothy finished speaking, something beautiful happened. Her 3 children, without any hesitation, rushed onto the stage. They surrounded their mother in the tightest embrace, all of them crying and holding each other. There was no judgment in their faces, only love and support, and a desire to comfort their mother who had clearly been carrying this burden for far too long. Steve Harvey stood to the side, openly weeping. His face showed everything he was feeling: shock at what Dorothy had revealed, admiration for her courage, sadness for the years she had spent hiding, and joy at seeing her family's immediate acceptance. His expression told the story better than any words could. The studio audience had risen to their feet. They weren't just applauding. They were giving Dorothy a standing ovation that seemed to go on forever. People were crying, hugging each other, witnessing what they all recognized as an incredibly brave and significant moment. Dorothy's daughter Rebecca was the first to speak, still holding her mother tightly. Mom, we love you. We love you exactly as you are. You didn't have to hide this from us. You never had to hide. Dorothy's son James added, You're the bravest person I know, Mom, not because you're coming out now but because you survived all those years of hiding. I can't imagine how hard that must have been. Her youngest daughter, Sarah, simply said through her tears, I'm so proud of you, so incredibly proud. After several minutes, the family finally released Dorothy from their embrace. Steve Harvey stepped forward, wiping his own eyes. He took Dorothy's hands in his and just looked at her for a moment, clearly struggling to find the right words. Miss Dorothy, Steve finally said, his voice thick with emotion, in all my years of doing this show, I have never seen anything like what just happened here. What you just did took more courage than anything I've ever witnessed on this stage. He paused, collecting himself. You know what breaks my heart? That you felt you had to hide who you were. That you lived 72 years feeling like you couldn't be yourself. That's not right. That should never have been necessary. Dorothy nodded, tears still flowing. I know, but that was the world I grew up in. That was the reality I faced. I did what I thought I had to do to survive, to have a normal life, to protect myself and eventually my family. Steve shook his head. But look at this, he said, gesturing to her children still gathered around her. Look at how much they love you. Look at how they immediately embraced you. You've been carrying all this fear, all this worry, and they just showed you that you never needed to be afraid, not with them. Dorothy smiled through her tears. I see that now. I see that I underestimated them. I underestimated love. Steve turned to address the audience and the cameras directly. Ladies and gentlemen, what we just witnessed is what real courage looks like. This woman, at 72 years old, chose to live in truth rather than continue living it. She chose authenticity over comfort. She chose freedom over secrecy, and her family, without hesitation, chose love. He looked back at Dorothy. Can I ask you something? What made you decide to do this today? Why here? Why now? Dorothy took a deep breath. I'm 72 years old, I don't know how much time I have left, and I realized that I didn't want to die with this secret. I didn't want to reach the end of my life and realize I had never been completely honest with the people I love most. When my daughter told me we were coming on this show, something clicked. I thought if I'm going to do this, if I'm going to finally speak my truth, I should do it somewhere big, somewhere public, somewhere I can't take it back. I needed to burn the bridge behind me so I couldn't retreat back into hiding. Steve nodded slowly, understanding flooding his face. You used this stage to set yourself free. Yes, Dorothy said simply. I used this stage to finally be completely myself. Steve Harvey made a decision in that moment. Dorothy, we're going to play fast money and you're going to win this money for your family. But I want to do something else too. I want to make sure your story reaches as many people as possible. Because there are people out there, right now, who are hiding just like you were. There are people who think they're too old to come out or that it's too late to be themselves. Your courage could change their lives. Dorothy played fast money with renewed energy. The questions seemed easy now, lighter somehow, as if the weight she had been carrying had lifted. She answered clearly and confidently, and of course she easily won the money. But everyone watching knew the real prize wasn't the $20,000. The real prize was freedom. When the episode aired 3 weeks later, the response was overwhelming. The clip of Dorothy's coming out went viral immediately, garnering over 100 million views in the first week alone. But it was the comments section that truly showed the impact of what she had done. Thousands of people shared their own stories. Elderly people who had lived their entire lives in the closet wrote about how Dorothy had inspired them to finally tell their truth. One 80-year-old man wrote that he had called his children the day after seeing the episode and told them he was gay. Like Dorothy's children, they had embraced him with love and acceptance. A 65-year-old woman shared that she had been married to a man for 40 years and had never told anyone she was bisexual. After seeing Dorothy's courage, she had conversations with her husband and her adult children, and they had all supported her completely. Young people wrote about how seeing an elderly woman come out had given them hope that they could be themselves at any age. Parents wrote about how Dorothy's story had helped them understand their own children better. Teachers used the clip in diversity and inclusion workshops. Therapists shared it with clients who were struggling with their identities. But perhaps the most powerful response came from someone unexpected. 3 months after the episode aired, Dorothy received a letter. The return address was from California. When she opened it, her hands began to shake. The letter was from Margaret, the woman she had loved in college 50 years earlier. Margaret had seen the Family Feud episode. She wrote that she had never married, that she had spent her life teaching at a university in San Francisco, that she had come out in the 1980s and lived openly as a lesbian. She wrote that she had never stopped thinking about Dorothy, never stopped wondering what might have been. She wrote that seeing Dorothy finally come out had brought back all those memories, all that love they had shared, all the possibilities that fear had stolen from them. The letter ended with a simple question: would Dorothy like to meet for coffee and catch up after all these years? Dorothy's children encouraged her to reach out. Within a week, Dorothy flew to California. She and Margaret met at a small coffee shop near the university where Margaret had taught. They talked for 6 hours that first day. They talked about their lives, the paths they had taken, the choices they had made. They talked about regret and acceptance, about fear and courage, about all the years that had passed and all the time they had left. Dorothy and Margaret didn't try to recapture the romance they had shared 50 years earlier. They were different people now, shaped by decades of different experiences. But they became close friends. Margaret visited Dorothy in Alabama. Dorothy visited Margaret in California. They emailed each other daily, sharing thoughts and memories and the small details of their lives. More importantly, through their renewed friendship, Dorothy connected with the LGBTQ community in a way she never had before. She started attending Pride events in Birmingham. She volunteered with organizations that supported elderly LGBTQ individuals. She became a spokesperson for the idea that it's never too late to live authentically. 6 months after the original episode aired, Family Feud invited Dorothy back for a follow-up segment. Steve Harvey sat down with her for an intimate conversation about what had changed in her life since coming out on national television. "Miss Dorothy," Steve said, "I have to tell you, your episode changed me. It changed how I think about a lot of things. It reminded me that everyone has a story, everyone carries something, and we never really know what people are going through." "How has it changed you?" Dorothy smiled, and Steve noticed immediately that she looked different. She looked lighter, younger somehow, as if decades of weight had been lifted from her shoulders. "I feel like I've been born again," Dorothy said. "Not in a religious sense, though I'm still a woman of faith, but I feel like I'm finally living my real life. For 72 years, I was performing the role I thought I was supposed to play. Now I'm just being myself. And it's so much easier, Steve. It's so much lighter." She continued, "My children and I are closer now than we've ever been. They tell me that knowing the full truth about who I am has helped them understand me better, understand choices I made when they were growing up. My grandchildren think it's wonderful that their grandmother is finally living authentically. And I've connected with my old friend Margaret again, which has been such a gift." Steve leaned forward. "Do you have any regrets? Do you wish you had done this sooner?" Dorothy thought for a moment. "Of course, part of me wishes I had been brave enough to do this 50 years ago, but I also know that I wasn't ready then. The world wasn't ready then. Everything that happened in my life, including the years I spent hiding, led me to this moment. I have a wonderful family that I might not have had if I had made different choices. I have experiences and wisdom that came from living the life I lived. So no, I don't regret my past. I just celebrate my present." The follow-up segment included testimonials from some of the people who had been inspired by Dorothy's story. A 78-year-old man appeared on video to thank Dorothy for giving him the courage to come out to his retirement community. A 40-year-old woman thanked Dorothy for helping her mother understand and accept her own identity. A teacher thanked Dorothy for providing a powerful example of courage that she now shares with her students. Steve Harvey ended the segment with words that would be widely quoted. "Miss Dorothy showed us all that courage doesn't have an age limit, that it's never too late to be yourself, that the truth, even when it's scary, will set you free. And most importantly, that love, real love, doesn't have conditions. Her family's immediate acceptance showed us what family should be, what love should be." In the years that followed, Dorothy became a sought-after speaker at LGBTQ events, particularly those focused on elder issues. She spoke about the unique challenges faced by people who spent most of their lives in the closet. She talked about the importance of creating spaces where older LGBTQ individuals could find community and support. She shared her story as a reminder that it's never too late to live authentically. Dorothy also worked with several organizations to create resources for families of people who come out later in life. She understood that while her children had been immediately accepting, not everyone has that experience. She wanted to help families navigate these conversations with love and understanding. The $20,000 that Dorothy won on Family Feud was donated to an organization that provides support services for LGBTQ seniors. Dorothy said it felt right to use the money to help others who might be going through what she had experienced. On the first anniversary of her coming out, Dorothy's family threw a celebration they called her Ray Birthday. They invited Margaret, who flew in from California. They invited friends from the LGBTQ community that Dorothy had connected with over the year. They even invited Steve Harvey, who surprised everyone by showing up with a film crew to document the celebration. During the party, Dorothy gave a short speech that brought everyone to tears. "A year ago today, I stood on a stage and said words I had been afraid to say for 50 years. I told my truth in front of millions of people. And you know what happened? The sky didn't fall. The world didn't end. Instead, I found freedom. I found community. I found myself." She continued, "I spent so much of my life afraid of what people would think, afraid of being rejected, afraid of losing love. What I learned is that the people who truly love you will love you for who you really are, and the people who can't accept you, well, they were never really in your corner anyway." Dorothy looked around the room at all the faces smiling back at her. Her children, her grandchildren, her great-grandchildren, Margaret, new friends from the community, Steve Harvey. "This," she said, gesturing to everyone gathered, "this is what happens when you choose truth. You find your people, you find your joy, you find your life." Steve Harvey stood up and raised his glass. "To Dorothy," he said, "who taught all of us that it's never too late to be brave, it's never too late to be yourself, and it's never too late to start living the life you were meant to live." The room erupted in applause and cheers. Dorothy stood there, surrounded by love and acceptance, finally completely herself after 7 decades of hiding. It was a moment of pure joy. Dorothy's story continued to inspire people for years to come. Her Family Feud episode became one of the most watched and shared clips in the show's history. It was used in countless diversity training sessions, shown in schools, shared in support groups. Her face, in that moment of courage when she spoke her truth, became an icon of bravery and authenticity. Academic researchers studied what they called the Dorothy effect, a measurable increase in older adults coming out that followed her televised revelation. Support groups for LGBTQ seniors reported significant increases in membership. Helplines for LGBTQ individuals reported more calls from older people seeking support and community. But for Dorothy herself, the most meaningful impact was personal. She had spent 72 years living with a secret, living as half of herself, always wondering what might have been. Now, she was fully alive, fully present, fully herself. She had no more secrets. She had nothing left to hide. In interviews, Dorothy often said that her only regret was not doing it sooner. But then she would smile and add that everything happens in its own time, and that her moment on Family Feud had been exactly when it was meant to happen. If I had come out when I was younger, she would say, maybe I wouldn't have had the perspective I have now. Maybe I wouldn't have been able to help other people the way I can now. Maybe my story wouldn't have reached as many people. Everything happened exactly as it was supposed to. As for Steve Harvey, he later said in interviews that Dorothy's episode had profoundly changed him. He became more vocal in his support of LGBTQ rights. He started asking deeper questions during Family Feud introductions, giving contestants more opportunities to share their authentic selves. He said that Dorothy had taught him that everyone deserves to live their truth, and that creating space for people to do that was one of the most important things he could do with his platform. The expression on Steve's face during Dorothy's coming out became one of the most iconic moments in television history. That mixture of shock, compassion, tears, and joy captured everything that made the moment so powerful. It showed a man being changed in real time, witnessing something that touched him deeply and transformed his understanding. Years later, Dorothy was asked what she would say to someone who was thinking about coming out but was afraid. Her answer was simple but powerful. You are not alone. You have never been alone. And the freedom that comes from living as your authentic self is worth any fear you have to face to get there. I was 72 years old when I finally spoke my truth. I wish I had done it sooner, but I'm so grateful I did it at all. Don't waste another day hiding who you really are. Life is too short, and you are too precious to spend it pretending to be someone you're not. Dorothy's story reminds us all that courage comes in many forms and can happen at any age. That truth is always more powerful than fear. That love, when it's real, doesn't have conditions. And that sometimes the bravest thing we can do is simply be ourselves. If Dorothy's incredible story of courage moved you, please take a moment to like this video and subscribe to our channel. We share powerful, real stories from Family Feud that remind us what humanity looks like at its best. Share this story with someone who needs to hear it, someone who might be hiding their truth, someone who needs to know that it's never too late to be yourself. Your like and share could be the encouragement someone needs to finally live authentically. Thank you for being part of this community, and remember, you are enough exactly as you are. The world needs your authentic self, not the version you think you're supposed to be.